Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to answer which is the better buy, Visa or Mastercard stock. These are two of my favorite businesses and we're going to see why when we look at some of these metrics. Starting with their price change in 2022, Visa and Mastercard were down 3% and 4% respectively. When the broader market saw much larger declines, these stocks held up relatively well. Next, let's look at their quarterly revenue, and each of these have grown nicely from around 2.5 billion in revenue in 2014. They've increased to 7.8 billion and 5.75 billion. So a nice upward trajectory in revenue growth for these two. And then if we look at quarterly, looking at year over year growth percentages, in recent, of course, they fell. Revenue growth fell after the outbreak when we were stuck at home. We weren't going out and spending money on our cards, and we actually reduced purchases online for the first few weeks after the outbreak as well. And then spending rebounded robustly, and even in its most recent quarter, both Visa and MasterCard double-digit revenue growth, 18% and 15% for MasterCard. And interestingly, these two companies benefit from inflation because Visa and MasterCard take a percentage of the transaction value as their revenue, typically 3%. So if you spend $100, they get $3 in revenue when you use your Visa or MasterCard. And so if inflation causes you to spend more money for the same amount of goods, that just means the 3% that Visa and MasterCard get is higher. So they're positively correlated to inflation to some regard, right? Yes, if inflation causes a recession and then we reduce our spending, that's going to be bad news for Visa and MasterCard. But just inflation by itself is a tailwind for Visa and MasterCard. Next, let's look at their operating profit margins for the trailing 12 months. And this is one of my favorite metrics to look at for these two companies because you will scarcely find any business that earns these kinds of operating profit margins. Visa at 67.15%. There are thousands of companies in the world that would love to have a gross profit margin of 67%. Visa boasts an operating profit margin of 67%. That's absolutely incredible. I would love to have a business that's earning these kinds of operating profit margins. And this metric is one of the primary reasons why I've been recommending Visa and MasterCard stock. Even MasterCard, even though it's not as high as Visa, still a very impressive 57% operating profit margin. Next, let's look at cash flow from operations. And again, very nice growth from less than 2 billion in July of 2020. Visa's cash flow from operations nearly tripled to 5.9 billion, and Mastercard from less than 2 billion in cash flow from operations, rising to 3.8 billion. Not as good as Visa, but still very nice cash flow from operations growth. And let's look at their total assets and then cash and equivalents. So Visa's total assets has grown from a little less than 50 billion to a little more than 85 billion, and Mastercard a little less than 25 billion to close to 37 billion. So each of these companies' total assets has, I would say, a rough estimate would say that it's doubled over this time, over 10 years. And much of the some of that increase is just cash, right? Cash is an asset, and look at how much cash has grown from less than 5 billion to over 15.7 billion for Visa, and then from less than 5 billion to nearly 7.4 billion for Mastercard. This could indicate that dividends might increase in the future or their share buybacks might increase in the near term if the companies feel that would be a good use of its cash. Finally, let's look at the valuation, and the metric I'm going to look at is the price to earnings forward ratio. And MasterCard is trading at a PE forward of 31.22, where Visa is trading at a forward PE of 26.88. MasterCard is trading a little bit more expensively than Visa in this metric, and that's partly attributed to MasterCard's better earnings prospects going forward. MasterCard is a little bit smaller than Visa, and so its growth prospects are a little bit greater than Visa, so investors are willing to pay a premium for MasterCard and that's reflected in its valuation. However, if I was to choose which of these two stocks to buy, I'm going to say Visa is the better stock to buy, just because we looked at some of those metrics, and Visa was beating Mastercard in each of these metrics, especially the operating profit margin. Visa is consistently ahead of Mastercard, and so I like that. I like that performance advantage, and so I would go with Visa. But if you're an investor and you're thinking between these two, Visa or Mastercard, which one should I buy? I would just say split your investment in two and buy half and half, Visa and Mastercard. So if you're thinking about investing $100 and you're trying to decide between which one to buy, I would say get $50 of Visa and $50 of Mastercard. They're both incredible companies. Getting the both of them diversifies you a little bit and reduces some risk while exposing you to both of these magnificent businesses. All right, so that's all I've got for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. I want to thank the Motley Fool for sponsoring this video. Visit fool.com/parkev for the 10 best stocks to buy now.